Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF. The name alone conjures images of heroic physicians parachuting into war zones, treating the wounded regardless of politics, asking nothing in return. A $2.4 billion annual budget, operations in over 70 countries. Nobel Peace Prize winners, one of the most trusted names in humanitarian work on the planet. That reputation is now being used as a weapon, and the target is Israel. Shalom, I'm Igal, and this is Middle East in less than 5 minutes. Let's dive into it. The numbers don't lie. NGO Monitor, a Jerusalem-based watchdog that monitors NGO activity, just released a comprehensive 35-page audit of MSF's global communications from October 7, 2023 through January 14, 2026. That's 27 months of data, every platform, multilingual, qualitative and quantitative. Here are the numbers. MSF used the Israel genocide label 272 times across all its platforms in those 27 months, and 70 times on MSF's primary X Twitter account alone. In contrast, Israeli hostages were the primary subject in only 3 posts across MSF's international feeds, representing a frequency of less than 1.1% relative to the genocide accusations. Read that again. 250 Israelis were kidnapped on October 7, taken to tunnels, raped, starved, murdered in captivity. MSF mentioned them 3 times. They called Israel's response genocide 272 times. Now here's the part that makes those 272 mentions even more dishonest. MSF's use of the genocide label is reserved exclusively for Israel. During the same 27 months period, MSF made 0 mentions of genocide regarding Sudan, Myanmar, Yemen, Ukraine, or Syria. 0 for Sudan, where the RSF has been committing mass atrocities including ethnic cleansing. 0 for Myanmar, where the military has been conducting what the UN calls genocide against the Rohingya. 0 for Yemen, where a decade of civil war has killed hundreds of thousands. 0 for Syria, where Assad's regime, with Iranian and Russian backing, murdered 500,000 people. Only Israel. The fraud. Here is a legal problem with MSF's genocide campaign that they quietly buried in their own communications. MSF acknowledged it does not have legal authority to establish intentionality, the core requirement for any finding of genocide. So, they admit they cannot legally call it genocide. They call it genocide anyway, 272 times. That's not medicine. That's not neutrality. That's a political campaign using the most serious legal accusation in international law against a democracy defending itself from a terrorist organization, while ignoring every other conflict on earth. The Al-Ahli Lie. October 17, 2023, Al-Ahli Hospital in Gaza explodes. Hamas immediately claims Israel bombed it, killing 500 people. The international media erupts. Embassies are attacked. Protests worldwide. MSF became a primary source of disinformation, issuing and intensely promoting a press release quoting Dr. Hassan Abu Sita, an MSF doctor who asserted this is a massacre, falsely blaming Israel for the explosion. The truth emerged quickly. United States, Canada, France, and an independent investigation by the New York Times all confirmed it was a failed rocket fired by Palestinian Islamic Jihad that misfired and hit the hospital. Israeli intelligence intercepted Palestinian communications, confirming this within hours. MSF failed to publish a retraction even after the United States, Canada, and France, as well as an investigation by the New York Times, confirmed PIJ responsibility. They spread the lie. They never corrected it. and they continued to platform Abu Sita, the same doctor who spread the false accusations, on a global media tour for over a year as a trustworthy eyewitness. The terrorist on their payroll. June 25, 2024. Israel kills a man in Gaza City named Fadi al-Wadiya. MSF immediately issues an outraged statement calling him one of their physiotherapists killed on his bicycle while cycling to their clinic to provide vital medical care. Their local operations manager called it cynical and abhorrent. They demanded condemnation. After MSF issued a denial that al-Wadiya has been a terror operative, the IDF released images showing al-Wadiya wearing a PIG uniform. MSF doubled down, said Israel was lying, yet Palestinian Islamic Jihad included al-Wadiya on a list of its high-ranking commanders who were killed during the Gaza war. It turns out he was the deputy head of PIJ's military manufacturing unit, who had developed an advanced PIJ's rocket array for 15 years and played a central role in the organization's knowledge, electronics, and chemistry. Not just a physiotherapist, the deputy head of PIJ's military manufacturing unit, 15 years building rockets to kill Israelis, while being employed by MSF for 6 years. He wasn't the only one. Nasser Hamdi al-Shafour worked as an MSF driver while simultaneously serving as a Hamas sniper during combat operations against the IDF. In January 2026, Israeli authorities reported that at least 2 additional MSF employees held formal memberships in PIJ and Hamas. According to an MSF staffer involved in the NGO's hiring process, who admitted to the Atlantic in 2025, we were told not to check backgrounds. The staffer added, our Arab staff was greatly concerned because to be in the same room with the operatives put all at risk. We were told not to check backgrounds. A 2.4 billion organization with 70 country operations employing people who build missiles for designated terrorist organizations, told not to check backgrounds while accusing Israel of genocide. Hamas Knew MSF. According to December 2022 internal Hamas Ministry of Interior memo, MSF has a Hamas-approved liaison that serves as a point of contact between Hamas authorities and MSF. Let that sink in. Hamas, a designated terrorist organization, has an approved liaison inside Doctors Without Borders before October 7 even happened. And in 2025, 2 Hamas documents found by Israeli forces in Gaza showed that Doctors Without Borders, along with the International Committee of the Red Cross, were aware of the presence of Hamas in Gaza's medical facilities despite obfuscating or outright denying it publicity. MSF repeatedly claimed in public statements, we have seen no evidence that the hospital building or the compounds are being used by Hamas as a military base. They knew. They said nothing. They accused Israel instead. MSF's own former leader broke ranks. This isn't just Israel's analysis. MSF's own former Secretary General, Alan Dextex, published a report in December 2023, just 2 months after October 7, titled MSF, an accomplice of Hamas? His findings: over 40% of statements by MSF staff, including senior figures, raised Hamas and the October 7 massacre. Some boasted of participation in tunnel construction and weapon production. A significant proportion of MSF staff in Gaza never denounced the crimes committed by Hamas, not the massacre, not the hostages, not the use of hospitals as barracks or human shields. His conclusion: MSF is no longer neutral. Its humanitarian language now serves a political cause. That's not a pro-Israel critic. That's MSF's own former Secretary General. The Vetting Standoff. When Israel demanded MSF submit a staff list for security vetting, basic, reasonable requirement for any organization operating in an active terror zone, MSF refused. Their justification? European privacy law. Yet for years, NGOs in Gaza, including MSF, provided similar information to Hamas authorities without apparent legal consequences. Evidently, privacy is sacrosanct when Israel checks for terrorist links, but negotiable for an Islamic terrorist group. They will give their staff lists to Hamas. They won't give them to Israel. In January 2026, faced with expulsion from Gaza, MSF agreed to provide the list. The deadline passed. They didn't submit it. Israel ordered them out by February 28, 2026. September 2025. The campaign drops its mask. September 2025, MSF launched a campaign titled "Doctors Can't Stop Genocide, World Leaders Can." This is no longer a humanitarian organization commenting on medical conditions. This is a political campaign explicitly lobbying world governments using the genocide label against Israel, a label they admit they have no legal authority to establish. The same month, MSF France called on France to ensure no French weapons are used by the Israeli army to conduct its genocidal war in Gaza. MSF Switzerland declared neutrality cannot be an excuse in the face of genocide. And MSF's new CEO, hired in January 2026, Tirana Hassan, former executive director of Human Rights Watch, who previously sent a letter to EU foreign ministers accusing Israel of collective punishment, forced displacement, apartheid, persecution, and unlawful, indiscriminate, and disproportionate use of explosive weapons. They didn't hire a doctor. They hired an anti-Israel activist lawyer. The double standard in one picture. NGO Monitor's data presents the starkest possible image. In 27 months, operating in over 70 countries, witnessing wars in Sudan, Myanmar, Yemen, Ukraine, and Syria, MSF used the word genocide exactly 0 times for any of those conflicts. Israel, 272 times. Sudan's RSF has been burning villages and massacring ethnic minorities in Darfur. Again, the Myanmar military has systematically displaced over 1 million Rohingya. Assad murdered 500,000 Syrians with chemical weapons and barrel bombs. MSF's genocide count for all of them combined? 0. Only for Israel, the only Jewish state fighting a war it did not start against the terrorist organizations that raped, murdered, and kidnapped its civilians, does MSF reach for the most serious word in international law. What this means? MSF's founding principle is Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, without politics, without sides, treating the wounded regardless of who they are. That principle is dead. As NGO Monitor's report concludes, MSF has transformed from a humanitarian organization into a leading source of false accusations and demonization targeting Israel, joining an intensive advocacy campaign that labeled Israel's response genocide based on manipulated and distorted evidence to support a predetermined conclusion, while blatantly omitting Hamas's large-scale militarization of hospitals, schools, and civilian infrastructure. Here's the bottom line. MSF employs people who build rockets for Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They were told not to check backgrounds. They have a Hamas-approved liaison. They knew Hamas was in the hospitals. They said nothing. They accused Israel of genocide 272 times. They mentioned Israeli hostages 3 times. They refused the same vetting they provide to Hamas. Their own founder called them Hamas accomplices. And they've launched a global political campaign funded by $2.4 billion in charitable donations from people who think they are saving lives, to pressure governments against the world's only Jewish state. They haven't issued a correction in Al-Ahli hospital to this day. Doctors Without Borders? Maybe. Doctors Without Integrity? Absolutely. If you find this episode helped you see the world differently, or understand something that bothered you, follow the podcast, rate it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you listen to it, and share it with your friends. Help spread the word. Thank you. I'm Igal, and this was Middle East in less than 5 minutes. Until next time, shalom.